Hello everyone, welcome to this Namos user group webinar. This webinar is titled HCM Redwood, Unlocking the Future of Intelligent Innovation. We have a Q&A feature as well as a chat feature, but it'd be preferential if you could ask any questions in the Q&A bit, and we'll be monitoring that and going through it towards the end. But today, the speaker is Esther Hess, Talent Management and Practice Lead at Namos. So over to you, Esther.
Thank you. I was just trying to scan everybody's face in, and disconcertingly, I can't see anyone's faces. So I'm just hovering over people's squares to see who's here. So I can't see anyone, but hello. As Yayan said, I'm Esther Hess, Talent Management Practice Lead at Namos. I've been at Namos for about 4.5 years, I think. And before that, I worked on the client side. So I started in HR, and then I moved through various HR systems roles in the private sector and in higher education predominantly. Before I joined Namos, I was at a university and we implemented Oracle, and then I went onto the team that supported Oracle. So partly telling you that to kind of introduce myself, and partly because I'll refer every so often to kind of what it felt like when I was on the client side, to kind of try and reassure you that I understand what it feels like to be in your shoes. Let me just skip on to the next slide. When we were thinking about what we'd cover in this session, and Yayan gave you an overview of the title then, which is very grand. When we were talking about that title, and I was thinking about what I thought it would be useful to cover, where I started with was the kind of the big Redwood headlines, talking about some of the features that we're getting lots of information about, and then I thought, hang on, is that what I would have wanted to hear? Is that useful? There's quite a lot of content already out there about what Redwood unlocks, what Redwood brings. And so what I thought might be better was if I asked you what kind of features you were finding useful. So I went out to a bunch of our clients and asked sorry, I'm having problems with my slides here. Hang on one sec. Is that moving between slides, Namos team?
It just moved to the introductory slide with the two people on.
There we go. I'll manually push it forward with the arrows. That's fine. So what I did was I went out and asked clients what they were finding useful in Redwood. So rather than what we're kind of being told is really useful by Oracle, I wanted to ask users what they were genuinely finding useful. And some of those things marry up with what the big headlines are, and some of them don't. Some of them are kind of smaller things that are just improving usability and improving efficiency. It's like sometimes it's their little things that you get excited about, or that I get excited about. And so I'll have a mix of those things as we walk through the session. The way I'm going to run the session is I've wimped out of doing a live demo, and instead I've kind of done a demo but then taken screenshots just in case the gods of the demo environments are not shining upon me. So what I'll do is I'll walk through quotes that clients had sent on to me, and we've had a real range of clients. We've had people in like big retail organizations respond. People from legal. I know some of those were going to attend. Hi, if you're there, I can't see you, but hello, and thank you for providing some feedback. People in university, so a real range, private sector, public sector, have sent these responses back to me around specific features they found really useful or exciting. And then there were some that were just kind of more overarching quotes around what it's like to work in Redwood. So the top one is around the change design, web design, and I think the point is it just feels consumer grade UI now. So this is what you're expecting from websites that you're visiting in your real life as well as your work life. And I'm guessing that some of the people who are attending today are partway through Redwood implementations. Perhaps you've done a couple of modules, but not all of them, or even within a module, you've switched to certain screens, not to others. And then there may be people who are right at the start of their journey and haven't done much enablement at all, which is fine. We've worked with clients quite recently who actually, when we got into their environment, they were still on the classic UI, and so there was a real big jump forwards to Redwood for them. And I kind of want to reassure you today that that's okay if you're not all the way there, and kind of get you excited about the move to Redwood. I know what it's like when you're in one of those teams supporting a system, and being on Oracle, it's a journey. You're constantly fired with new stuff. You've got quarterly releases to contend with. Sometimes it's difficult to kind of get your head out of the day job and be excited about what's coming, because it's going to involve some work. So what I wanted today to be was around getting you excited, looking at those quick wins, looking at some of those big ticket items as well that will really make a difference. So anyway, back to my slide. These I won't read through them, but these are sort of just some overarching quotes that people have given around what it's like, what the feel of Redwood is like. And what I'll do next is move on to the specific examples that people have given me. And I've generally structured this by the module that it relates to. So starting with core HR, I'm not surprised this came up from a number of clients. Actually, this particular one, I think, was a retail client. So this is My Activity Centre, and as you probably know, there are a number of activity centres that come along with Redwood. My Activity Centre is the one that's there for employees. I'll talk a bit about Team Activity Centre. I will very briefly reference Recruitment Activity Centre and Payroll Activity Centre too. It's difficult to fit. I did get really good feedback, so thank you for those who did send it in, but it was difficult to fit absolutely everything in. So anyway, I'll go on to My Activity Centre, and the way I'm going to do this is give you the quote and then talk you through what it looks like. And then obviously you've got an opportunity to ask questions as well, which I'm hoping Dawn will be able to field some of those for me, but anything that's left over we'll pick up at the end. So My Activity Centre has been a real hit with our employees. All the info's in one place with key messages and navigations. So for those who haven't enabled this yet, I'm logged in as Curtis, and pretty much I'm logged in as Curtis through the whole session. Curtis is a busy guy. He's got a lot of tiles. He's got lots of menus. Obviously, for most people, this would look a lot cleaner. There'd be a lot fewer icons on here. But I'm in as Curtis, and this is about me as an employee. So I'm sitting under the Me tile, and you can see there I've highlighted My Activity Centre. So click onto that, and you're presented with this screen, which is really configurable. So depending on what kind of organisation you are, depending on what's useful, you can decide what lands in My Activity Centre. So I've called out some of the important stuff. Across the top here, you've got what essentially are analytics. They're kind of embedded reports, and Oracle give you a choice of different analytics that you might want to pop on here. So you can have things like when your next holiday is. On here, you've got year-end documents. One that I did want to call out, just as a kind of FYI, is be careful. So this is a really, really useful screen. It stops you having to click about all over the place to do your sort of personal admin. But this one, we've had feedback positive from some clients around it's really useful not to have to go all the way to your payslip to go and see this type of data. Some people have said, oh, can we switch that off, please? Because I work in open plan offices and I don't want my neighbour peering over to see what I earn. So just an FYI on there. This one is really relevant to some work I'm doing at the moment around Learn. So this is highlighting to employees straight away and in a really visual way. You've got some learning that's coming up, and we're working with some clients at the moment around compliance training and making sure people do their training on time. So this is again a really useful way of kind of presenting them right in their face about learning that they might need to be booking on and completing. Nice links just to other areas of the system. So again, if you finish with Activity Centre and the next thing you want to do is, I don't know, go to Journeys, you're not having to navigate home before you go over and access that space. Next section is these are quick actions, which you're probably familiar with. Again, this is configurable for what works for your organisation. So I don't know, if you guys don't use time cards, you're not going to enable that quick action. So you can configure that based on what is useful to you. And then at the bottom here, you've got what's called the timeline. So you can't see, but if I were to scroll down on a demo, there would be a bunch of events here at the bottom, which again is configurable based on what's useful to you as an organisation. So you can have things like probation end date in here, which I think would be useful, year-end documents. I think you can have things like anniversaries and things in there, and it's just a nice visual way where you can scroll up and down and see what's in your timeline. So Team Activity Centre, this is similar, but this is you as a manager, and if I click through to the screenshots, feedback that we received was from a user in a university, I think, and this was around a very specific feature of Team Activity Centre, that it enables you quickly to be able to switch between teams. And so what's quite common in higher education, but I've seen this in legal firms as well, amongst others, is proxy managers. It's always a nice contentious conversation during discovery around whether you should allow proxy managers or not. There's usually a bit of a debate about it, and then they say, yeah, let's keep doing that, because we're not going to get our solicitors to do this, or we're not going to get our senior academics to do this. They need to be able to have proxy manager access delegated. And so it was a bit of a pain in responsive. It was a little bit fiddly to get to. So I understand why this quote's come in. There are two different types of team views, I guess, from Team Activity Centre. You've got this one on the side, which goes through switching teams, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And then here you've got a little drop down as well, which enables a different view. So if I start with the one on the right hand side, this enables you to switch between teams that might report to you, so like beneath you. So Curtis has who we got? Hope reporting to him, and Hope has people reporting to her. So this, rather than having to kind of click through each name and find that team, you can switch then just between people who have teams beneath you, which is a nice quick way of doing it. This, I have to admit, is doctored. So anybody who with the eagle eyes, Curtis in this environment did not have a proxy manager, but this is what it looks like. If you click on this little arrow, it's showing you any access where you've got proxy manager access for somebody. So this person here has given Curtis proxy manager access. So rather than the fiddly way you used to have to navigate this in responsive, you can just click on the person. Am I viewing my team? Am I viewing the proxy team? And then all of this beneath will change depending on what you've selected. I did want to just include a little bit more. This was the only feedback I got from around Team Activity Centre, but there are some bits and bobs that I found useful myself, so I just wanted to cover those off as well. So you've got these actions here when you click on a person. Again, I would often be opening lots of menus in responsive, or even on some of the other Redwood navigation, and then searching through different tiles to work out which one I was meant to be clicking on. And particularly if you've got HR users or users with lots and lots of tiles, that can waste time essentially. Whereas if you're using this as your platform, as your place to start your work, you cut out a whole bunch of that kind of unnecessary clicking and navigation. So this menu is about what you want to do to a particular employee, and this one is around what you might want to do kind of across the team. So you can see there's some stuff like if you in your organisation allow people to managers to add a non-worker, for example, they'd be able to do that, add a non-worker to their team. Obviously that's not specific to a person already working in the team, which is why it sits in this drop down rather than one of these down the right hand side. Not loads of organisations allow that, so you can have all that removed. But what I found useful is the absence planning, and so that's across the board, across the team, which is why it's sitting in this menu. So if you click on that top level item, you're taken to this screen, which is fine. There was something similar in responsive, but it was fiddly to get to. And I feel like it's that under time and labour rather than absence, which used to throw me, particularly as I've worked in organisations that didn't have time and labour, but I was still going to that section to do what I consider an absence task. So this makes more sense where this sits. What I do like, because I'm quite visual, is the timeline view. So if I click onto the next screen, you can see that I can see any absences in my team, and then this, really like this feature across the bottom. This is like a toggle that you drag. So rather than having to key in dates, I want to look between now and the end of year, for example, I just slide that slider across to the right, and any absences that were over here on the right show up. So it's much less clunky than in responsive. Okay, what's next? Okay, embedded application tasks in journeys. This came up from a couple of clients as well. I ummed and ahed about including it because you can do some of this in responsive. However, on reflection, the fact that journeys are all delivered through Redwood, I thought it does make sense to include this. And also, like, journeys are one of my answers to everything. So if a client comes with a problem they need to solve, I have like a couple of thought processes around areas or functionality that I think might be able to solve a problem, particularly if it's like it's like a wraparound. I think of it as wraparound care. So it's like our employees don't know how to go and do this thing, or we need to connect these bits of processes together. Journeys is kind of often where I start. So just because I like journeys as well, I wanted to include this. Yes, you can embed application tasks into journeys, and this just feels so much nicer as a user. So if I click in into the navigation, I'm doing this as an employee again, so I'm logged in as Curtis. You'll now recognise my activity centre, and you can click on journeys and access journeys through this link over here. You're presented with your list of journeys. I'm going to go to a really straightforward one just to kind of show you what this looks like. And it's a journey I just knocked up that would be related to perhaps asking people to maintain their personal details. So whether that's an onboarding type journey or whether you have like an annual process to make sure people are keeping on top of their personal data. Either use case would work, and I've seen both in clients' environments. So this first one, update personal details, and the first task you're taken to is your address. And so Redwood does this a lot, not just in journeys. It starts to bring together screens that technically might not be connected, and what that does, and especially for a brain like mine, I'll be taken onto a different bit of the system, I'll do a thing, I'm distracted by something else, I go back and I don't know where I was up to, I don't know what I'm doing next. What Journeys does, and particularly embedding these application tasks into Journeys, is it presents the information without you having to leave that screen. So you can go and update it, click done, and you're taken onto the next task. Much better experience, it's much more efficient, and it's much more kind of meaningful. The journey makes sense as a group of linked tasks. There is loads you can do in journeys. I think we've done a lot. We're working with a client at the moment to do a really, like, the most thorough onboarding journey I've ever seen, and it's brilliant, but I still feel like we're scratching the surface. Like, I still think there's loads of user case that we could explore. You can embed reports in here, that's really useful. So if you're wanting somebody to know something before they perhaps carry out the next task, that's a really useful way of presenting information to them. We've done some stuff around sort of reporting on documents of records here. You can embed videos, and again, it will all open within the journey. You're not having to navigate around and lose where you're up to. Okay, the next feature was, so far I've talked about things that are for sort of end users, employees and managers. some of the feedback we got, which I think is really useful, is about what it's like to be an HR user. There's a fair bit in the recruitment section, which I'll talk about, but this staying within core HR. How has Redwood made HR teams' lives easier? How has it made processes more efficient? And this stood out as a really good example where Oracle have kind of combined two different transactions into one transaction. So previously, if you were promoting somebody, you'd be needing potentially to go to, as an HR user, you're navigating to positions, finding the right position, making changes to positions, submitting that, potentially that's then going off for approval. Once that's approved, you're then sort of manually thinking, right, now it's time to go and do the next piece of work, going to find the person, going to make assignment changes, right? Potentially there's now more approvals on that. So it's a really lengthy process for what you as a user, an HR user, you know, it's actually all wrapped up. It's all the same thing. It isn't two different processes. It shouldn't need two different approvals. You should be able to kick off a transaction and see it right through to the end. And that's what this functionality does. So if I show you what that looks like, in fact, just before I do that, I think this, now I know this came from higher education as well. So what's a real common occurrence in higher education, there are two things. One, regrades. So that's where your position has grown and therefore the grade attached to it has grown and therefore your salary is going to change. Also, you have academic promotions. Again, it's a similar thing. This isn't where somebody applies for another job and is picked up out of a position and moved into another one. This is you're a lecturer, you're applying to become a senior lecturer, stuff happens, your job grows, you don't get picked up and moved out of that position, your position itself changes and then that impacts your assignment and therefore your salary. So if you're in an organisation where either of those types of things occur, where people are promoted kind of within their position rather than being picked up and taken out and stuck in another one, this is really, really beneficial and really, really speeds up the processing. So you've now got this quick action called promote and change position. Click onto that. You're presented with your list of people. Obviously, you've got normal search functionality, but I'm just going to click on the top person. And you're taken through to the Redwood screens to update information. So you've got these toggles. So if you're not interested in changing payroll details and compensation or what have you, you don't need to toggle those on. Just toggle on the ones that you want. Click continue. You're taken through to when and why, which is just presented more. It's just a nicer experience than those old responsive screens. I won't go through all of these, don't worry, but after you've done when and why, you get to positions, because that's where this process starts. It's a change to position. It's not a change to somebody's assignment. Again, I won't go through all the fields, but you would update whatever here. So it might be that the job is changing. It might be that the title is changing, potentially the grades as well. So I've just scooted down to the bottom here, still on position, but updating some details here. And then you can see once you've clicked submit, you'll be taken through some additional screens if you've toggled those on, and then through to salary. Click submit and it's done. Just take some water. And that's one transaction. And so that stop start has gone. So you're losing those inefficiencies of transaction stopping and starting. But the big one, I think, as well, is around approvals. That's a one. You only need to approve that once. And if you know what approvals are like, if you're having to approve a position, it's hanging around for a while. The person who's created that transaction is now going off doing other things. They're having to come back to it days later, kicking off another piece, and then there's a whole other approval before that can actually get applied to somebody's record and communicated to the employee. Okay, scooting on to some talent features that we've had feedback on. Liz, I don't know if you're on the call, but this was a lovely quote from you, and I won't go through it all. You can read it, but essentially, again, this is about how Redwood brings together screens that are related, but not necessarily all part of the same screen. And this is really visible in the performance piece, in performance documents piece. So you used to have to go and update goals. You used to have to go and update other bit competencies. It was all in different places. You'd get a little bit lost, and then finally it was on to update your actual performance document. So if I click on what it looks like now in Redwood, you can see this hasn't changed. I could have navigated through this through my activity centre as well. But if I click on the current tasks, that's my performance document. I really like this screen now. You've got these 3 different tiles because in this particular evaluation, these are all relevant. If actually you don't do competencies, this tile just wouldn't present itself here. So you can then click through, and I shouldn't say this, but like in responsive, completing my performance document was a little bit of a headache. So we use this at Namos, and it kind of makes you, before the process has started, you're already thinking, oh gosh, I'm not really looking forward to the administration of that. And you don't want that to be what people are focusing on when it's time to have a performance conversation. You know, that should be a really useful, really good conversation. You don't want people focusing on, oh, it's a bit of a faff. So as I say, this brings it all together. You can click on these tiles. I'm going to click on goals. It takes me through to the goals screen. There's a little bit more I like in here, which I've added in. This wasn't feedback from a client, but I much prefer this view now of goals. So again, I used to find it a bit clunky to complete information in here, and it would take longer than I think it needed to, because in responsive, you were scrolling up and down the screen, looking at information at the top of the screen, going back to the bottom of the screen to complete information. And now it's all much more contained, and you can kind of update things quickly and whilst referencing information down across here on the left-hand side. But if I'm going back to the quote and what the quote was about, you can now navigate between here and back to your performance document much more quickly. So if I click onto the next screen, you're taken back to your goal, and then again click back and you're back into your performance document. So yeah, we've just implemented this at Namos, and I'm expecting feedback to be really good in comparison to some of the kind of clunkiness of responsive. Okay, on to AI Assist within the realms of talent. So I think AI, all of the AI stuff is obviously some of the big headline stuff from Oracle. And I think that sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming, particularly when you're in that kind of BAU. It's different when you're on the start of a new implementation because it's all new. But when you're in that BAU process, you're staying on top of things, and sometimes stuff like AI can just be like, oh, I'm just not ready for that. I just want to fix this thing over here, or I just want to implement this little bit, this little feature. I can't quite get my head around AI yet, and I just want to reassure you that A, I kind of have had those feelings myself, and B, I'm over them. Some of this stuff is so quick to implement, and it can make a massive difference. And the AI Assist stuff that came in from a client really resonated with me as a user. So not as a consultant, but as a user of the system. So I've used it in performance reviews, and it can help give me the nudge to be able to get started. Like as a procrastinator, that is exactly my feelings around some of this stuff. So there are a number of places you can use AI Assist. I won't cover them all, but there's stuff around like writing job descriptions, the stuff around in Learn, coming up with descriptions for some offerings. And again, this isn't about like replacing your ability to do that. I like that idea of it's giving you a nudge, or it's giving you some inspiration. And one of the areas that I have found it useful myself as well is in performance reviews. So if I go through the navigation, I'm Curtis. I've got this person reporting through to me. I'm clicking on her evaluation, and you're presented with this AI Assist button. In this particular example, the evaluation is all about competencies. So the AI Assist button is going to apply AI Assist. I'll explain what that is if there's anybody that isn't familiar. That will apply it to the whole page. So any place where I might be writing some responses, that applies AI Assist to all of those, or you've got an option just to do it for individual competencies. Personally, I think you just do it for the lot and see how it reads. And what's neat is it tells the user now how it's generating that text. So that's what AI Assist is doing. It generates text for you basically, and depending where it is, it's using different information to come up with that text. And so I think what this does, it's not replacing what the manager should be doing and thinking about. It's exactly what's said here, is it's giving you that nudge. So I know I struggle with this, like how should I format this, or what topics should I be covering? This just gives you that outline, and you can go through and amend it all, or you can keep bits and bobs if it feels right. But I think this really helps with efficiency for those procrastinators, or perhaps where not all managers, writing's not going to be there. In fact, I'm one of these. Just writing isn't something that I do well or quickly on my own. And so having something that will give me a nudge, give me some inspiration is really, really helpful. But there are other features, and I won't go into them all because of time, but the other place that this resonated with me was on feedback. So we don't use this feature at Namos, but I looked into it because this had come in. I wanted to have a look at how it's set up and what it felt like. And I will be advocating Namos to switch this on, because it took me about 2 minutes to configure, but would save me hours each time it comes around to performance review time. So what this feature does is, let's say I'm Curtis, somebody has asked me for feedback. So I've got an alert to say that so-and-so wants some feedback. I can click on that. I get a notification saying who it is. So Ethel's asked for some feedback. Click on provide feedback. You're presented with a screen, which is just nicer to look at than the previous responsive screen. And then if you scoot to the bottom of that page, you'll see these AI Assist buttons. So these questions are set up as a questionnaire that you set up as part of feedback. And then if we pop some information in, so I typed in, so on the good side, project meetings produce results and are efficient. On the not so good side, I've said, whilst you're efficient, Curtis, you're rude. But I don't want to share the feedback exactly like that. I'm too much of a wimp to be that direct. So how can I soften it? AI Assist, and I've left this exactly as it is to show you how this works. And again, I won't read it, but there's some lovely feedback at the top here with a keep up the excellent work, which probably doesn't sound quite right given what's at the bottom. But obviously you've got the ability just to delete that and tweak this. And I think as a user, I would really find this useful because I do procrastinate a little bit. B, I think feedback is a really, really useful tool. And if people ask for it, I always want to give it. But I don't want to do it in a hurried way. I don't want to just bang something over that is not useful. What this would give me the ability to do is put some keywords in, let AI turn that into some decent sentences, add a bit more to it. And then I would go through and amend this. Like if somebody who knows me pretty well got that, they'd know, they wouldn't know who had written it because it's too formal. It's probably too well written. I would go through and change this, but it's taken away all that time of like procrastinating. How do I do this fairly, constructively? And we do provide quite a lot of feedback at Namos. So if I get 5 requests for feedback from people not in my team at mid-year and at end of year, that's going to take me quite a lot of time to respond to. And if you think about that across the whole organisation, this is a real time saver. So I've seen Duncan's on the call. So Duncan, note it, please. I'm asking for this to be switched on at Namos. Okay, on to ORC, my first love. Hiring navigation. So this is just quicker now. And again, if you have a busy recruitment team who are being called up by different managers, different candidates, and their focus is moved quite quickly, this is really helpful. So I'm logged in as a recruiter. I'm looking at a requisition, and you can see at the bottom here, you've got other tabs that you can go through. And in my scenario, I'm a recruiter. I'm doing something or other to this learning and development requisition, somebody gives me a call and says, where's that offer up to? I can click onto offers. I'm taken to the offers screen. I can do whatever I need, answer whatever question. So I'll click on the top one. Louisa wants to know why she's not got her offer yet. I can see it's in draft, so I can chase that up. Once that's dealt with, I can click back to requisitions, and I'm taken back to exactly where I was, and that just wasn't available in responsive. And so you would forget why you were up to, you would forget what requisition you were working on. I think this is a real benefit. And had, for example, I been on feedback and then gone over to offers, when I click back to requisitions, I'd be taken straight back to feedback again. So again, you're not losing that time trying to remember where you're up to, and or even just to navigate back to where you were. This one might be controversial for anybody who's using Redwood for Recruit. This was feedback that we had, that it's a massive overall improvement. Let me click through and I'll show you what this looks like. So I'm into hiring, onto my list of requisitions again. There's this little icon here which allows you to decide what columns you have in here. And so again, it's a nice user experience once you've got these columns as you want them. But also it saves time because you're not having to navigate left and right to see different bits of information. So it's really simple to do. You've got these tick boxes, you've got these icons on the side that allow you to kind of drag and drop stuff in a different order. So here I've decided on the columns I want, I've gotten rid of some, I've reordered them, and then you're presented with your new screen. The reason I say it's controversial is I've had really good feedback on this, and then on Customer Connect I've seen some people saying, I wish you would do such and such, and one of those such and such is allowing different users, different roles to as standard be able to see or not to see different columns. That's coming. I read that in 25D, and I should say that with Redwood we are seeing enhancements really thick and fast, and some of these are things that I've been waiting for forever. They all seem to be like one release. In each release I'm seeing one of those things land. There's also some changes to filtering. There are some new fields that you can filter on now in Redwood. Yeah, I liked this one. Navigating within requisitions is much less annoying now. Agreed. So if you click on a requisition and you complete some information, I'm going to speed up a bit, I've just clocked the time. Once you're filling in information, here I am, I'm on basic information, I've got to hiring team, I've now got this save and close button, which means if I go away, do something else, I come back to it, click back on my requisition, I can then see what I've already provided, and I'm not having to go through every single section like you used to have to, and you'd sit there and wait for the screen to render, getting irritated, and then you moved on to the next section, waiting for it to render, etc., etc. Now you can just whiz straight through to the section that you want to complete. So agreed, much less annoying now. Let me scoot through. Okay, offer expiry functionality. What we found, this came from a retail client as well. So what we'd found was with offer expiry, and this is one of those little features that will make a big difference to your recruiters. So it's not something that Oracle are probably going to sing about, but on the ground, it's something that people are finding really useful. In responsive, you used to have to provide your offer expiry date up front when you were drafting the letter, which meant if you then took ages to get an approval, that expiry date was nonsense. So what happens now is once you click on an offer and you go to extend it, it's at that point that you now get the opportunity to add an expiry date. There's been some feedback about making that non-mandatory, and again, I think it's 25D or 25C that's not mandatory anymore. This is a good one. Pre-screening questions. This is one of those ones that I've just been waiting since I started implementing Recruit. I've been waiting for this to come along, and it's come along in Redwood. So you didn't used to be able to reorder pre-screening questions that were templated into a requisition. And the way this works is I'll click on a rec. You're taken to details. I'll scoot through to the bottom, which is where pre-screening questions are. You've now got this beautiful little button, reorder, which allows you to drag and drop. You did used to be able to do this for questions that were added manually, but not templated questions. And when you did it, it was kind of difficult to see what you were reordering and where they were landing. This now allows you to do that, and it's really visual. You know exactly what you've done. So that's really improved that feature for recruiters, and in turn for candidates, because pre-screening questions can be in the sensible order that you want them to be in. This is my absolute favourite. So automated feedback. This isn't a quote from a client. This is a quote from me. So there is a feature where you can request feedback when somebody has been to an interview. Really underutilized. Like, it's a good functionality, but it was really underutilized, and it was because you had to manually go and ask for that feedback. The way you implement this is really straightforward. If anybody's familiar with the config screen for a candidate selection process, this is what it looks like. You just add it as an action, and this is going to automatically trigger when a candidate lands in that phase and state. So from the front end, what that looks like is you've got a requisition. Somebody's moved to that phase and state. So it's going to automatically trigger a request for some feedback. So if we click onto the feedback screen, you can see that Ethel's been asked to provide some feedback. Nobody's had to go and do anything to make that request. The system's gone and done that. And then if I quickly log in as Ethel, what that looks like, again, I've got a notification. I've got a much nicer view of what the feedback form looks like. And I've got these areas where I can go and have a look at the application or the rec itself. If I click on one of those, I'm presented with that on a sliding window, which Redwood does quite a lot, which is really neat as well. You're not moving away from pages. I can provide my feedback, submit it, and then you can see that that's changed to completed. And a recruiter or hiring manager can go and have a look at what that feedback looks like. So I've been waiting for that one since I first started implementing Oracle. I'm really glad to see that one come along. Right, I might finish on this one because I'm conscious of time, but this is a really useful one. So for absence, there haven't been that many changes. Like the screens are a little bit different, but functionality-wise, there's not loads of change. But being able to embed AI agents is a game changer, and this resonates. I've used this as well. It's sped up my ability to respond to employees as well. So if you click on to add an absence, you now see this screen, this banner at the top, where we've embedded an absence agent. And what that allows an employee to do is ask a question. So in this case, Curtis wants to know more about family leave. So he just types in family leave, and all of the information is brought back to him without having to go and navigate and find policies and stuff. So the way that's working, and we use this at Namos, things like our employee handbook and policies have been uploaded. So that's what the system is reading to be able to provide this responses. And I've used this week. I couldn't remember what the rules were around something, and I was able to do this rather than try and go and find a policy, which obviously slows the process down. But also employees can now stop asking managers what policies are, because this is presented to them as soon as they're thinking about absence. Payroll, I completely wimped out of. There is some activity, there's an activity centre. I was not going to do justice for that. If anybody's interested in it, I've got a colleague who will wax lyrical about it. So do get in touch if you want to know more. The only thing I would say on payroll is that what we've seen is the ability to embed guided journeys has helped with the bank details piece. So we've had mixed feedback, to be honest, around what the Redwood bank details screen looks like, ranging from this to, yeah, it's better than responsive, to something I won't say on this call. But for those who are not loving the screen, we've been able to embed a guided journey, because this is in responsive. In Redwood, you couldn't do this in responsive. So we've embedded a guided journey that just takes the employee through what they should be doing. This is really quick, like this is really easy to do. So again, if you're looking for one of those little features that you want to kind of crack on with, but don't want to have a think about like Redwood, the whole of Redwood, because it's overwhelming, this again is something that I'd have a look at. Guided journeys are fab. Right, conscious I've got to 55 minutes somehow, so I'm going to scoot through the next slides because they're about admin and config and probably not as exciting. They're exciting to me, they're exciting to Dawn, but potentially not everybody else on the call. So I'll scoot through these. They'll be in the slides that we'll share, and I'll move straight on, she says, to Q&A. Is there anything that's not been answered? I can't see the Q&A screen.
I can see the Q&A. We've got nothing come in as yet. If anyone has got any questions for Esther or Dawn, please put them in the Q&A and we've got time to answer them now. There was one thing I was going to mention is you've all got access to, or can have access to, Oracle's Customer Success Navigator. Please do go and have a look if you haven't already at the Redwood Adoption Centre and the AI Adoption Centre. There's really useful information in there about all the features. There's blogs, there's resources, documentation. So it's a great way to familiarise yourself with it as well, because there's all screenshots and everything in each of the areas. So have a look at that. And if anybody's got any questions on Success Navigator, please drop me a note.
Thanks, Sasha. The other thing I was going to say is if you haven't got any questions, comments around other stuff perhaps that you've used in Redwood that you're finding useful would be really helpful too. Really helpful to share between peers, so that we're again, what I wanted this session to be about is really what are people finding useful, rather than kind of like what we've been told to get excited about. Like, it's not always the big ticket items that are most exciting, it's the stuff that just changes people's experience of the system day to day. So if you think I've missed anything and you want to share it now or after, I will be happy to share across the wider group. Did I see a hand or a question? I'm excited too. I don't know who that user was, but and yeah, that promote and change one I think is a game changer too. How do people find those journeys, want to change their address? So you can do it in a couple of different ways, but basically you embed the journey on the screen itself, and you do that through Visual Builder. So you set up the journey itself, really easy to do, and then in Visual Builder you there's a field for embedding journeys basically, and that then just presents it on the screen. So that's what I did with that bank details one. Happy to send you I can't see who's asking these questions, but I'm happy to send over some instructions on that. Sasha, can you see who's asking the question?
Yeah, and we can export the chat. So we've got Nadia from Greenwich about the promote and change position, and then for the tasks in journeys and changing the address was Liz Doherty.
Oh, hello, Liz. Thank you for your input to all of this. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll scoot just to the last slide, which is just a thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your input before, if you did provide some feedback. And also we've got this QR code, which is the user group survey. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is around like what people might want to see at future
this is topics for any future webinars, so if you vote on anything here, we'll take it into consideration for what we can produce in future, as well as the locations for in-person events. So if that's all okay, Esther, thank you very much for everything you said there. I think there's another question just come in.
Payroll Activity Centre. So again, if you tell me who it is, then I'll pass the details over.
Yeah, Mark Stoker from Greenwich.
Hiya. Yeah, we'll send some details over to you. Oh, sorry, I didn't cover that. I would not have done it justice. I did think about attempting it and then thought, this is a language I don't understand.
Yes, so any further questions, please feel free to reach out to your Namos contact. And we will be sending these files, the slides out, and a recording of this shortly. But that concludes this webinar. So thank you everyone for attending, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.